I think that if you jumped on my app right now as sort of a commercial mariner, or even a boater, I mean, even a kayaker, if you jumped on my app right now, I think you'd get a lot of value out of it because the rules are the same for everyone, and they get applied pretty much the same to everyone. I mean, the Navy, we don't exactly get excused just because we're a warship.
Hi, and welcome back to the AI Captain's Log. We're the podcast where we chart the transition from traditional seamanship to the age of AI and maritime autonomy. I'm your host, Elizabeth Fortunato. I'm a 30-year veteran in IT and a licensed U.S. CG 50-ton captain. Picture this. You spent the day offshore fishing or cruising up the coast, and you are coming into an inlet. It's ink black, and through the salt spray, a confusing cluster of red, green, and white lights start flashing dead ahead. In that moment, your brain shouldn't be struggling to interpret abstract definitions. You don't have time to reach for that sliding tool that sits on your helm. You need instantaneous, intuitive recall of the color regs to know exactly who is the stand-on vessel and who must give way. Historically, mastering these rules meant grueling hours grinding through dry, dense paper manuals and flipping through static flashcards. It was stressful, manual rite of passage. But in 2026, the maritime landscape is fast-moving. The maritime sector is actively deploying cloud-based software and adaptive learning pipelines to turn daunting technical regulations into supportive, intuitive tools. To help us understand how high-value naval training frameworks are being completely restructured and democratized for civilian use and recreational captains, we are joined by an innovator who recognized a critical training gap and built the software solution to bridge it. Victoria Cavazos is a former naval surface warfare officer who migrated into high-end application development to build SeaSmart, a mobile training platform packed with all 38 Coloreg rules, verbatim, and 1,010 official USCG questions. That makes her story a true case study for the modern age of how she built it. She didn't raise millions or hire a massive team of developers. Instead, she leveraged AI-assisted coding to go straight from operational idea to live apps for a product on her own. Actually, I believe she has a partner, Nick, in this endeavor. Furthermore, Victoria represents an essential forward-looking female voice in the maritime technology industry that has historically been heavily underrepresented. Victoria, welcome to the bridge into the AI Captain's Log. I'm curious about your back. Hi. Thank you for joining me. I am curious about your background and what inspired you to join the Navy in the first place, because that wasn't where you started your career.
No. So the way that I joined the Navy, or the way I got into this business in the first place, my brother actually joined the Navy before me. And so when I was going to college, I went to this small liberal arts school in Austin, Texas. It's called St. Edward's University. I was actually studying Spanish literature there and working at my school's newspaper. And basically my younger brother, who's 3 years younger than me, he would come home on winter break or come home, when he could from the Navy when he had leave. And he was always telling me about how cool it was and also how hard it was and how much of a struggle it was. And I love a challenge. And one day we were chatting and he was like, I feel like you'd be a really good officer. Basically, my brother said that he thought this would be a good fit for me. And it was something I'd never considered because I never saw myself as somebody who could drive warships. I never, woke up thinking like, man, I'd love to drive a warship. But the more that I kind of started exploring this industry and started to see how cool it was to work on ships, I thought, yeah, I could absolutely do this. And the next thing I knew, I was talking to a recruiter at the University of Texas at Austin. That's where he was working out of. And he was like, how would you like to drive warships? And I said, yeah, absolutely. That's something I want to do. So I graduated.
You're like, that sounds badass. Let me sign up for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. It sounded so cool. So basically, I graduated college. I had done all my application for OCS, which is Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. I got accepted my senior year, or actually the summer right after senior year of college. And then, I got the call that I was scheduled to head to Newport, Rhode Island. And then I went there for OCS. And shortly after OCS, I went to my first ship, which was the USS Ross. It's a destroyer that at the time was based out of Rota, Spain.
That's a fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing. And that's no easy task because I know a lot of people who don't go through their college years as a scholarship through the Navy are not going to an academy to go right into officer training. So you must be pretty cool. You must be pretty smart. So I'm sure that they saw something in you that wanted to have you go right to OCS because that's pretty impressive that you got to do that. So thank you. And thank you for your service too. Because I think, like I said, I'm always so impressed with women who take on those roles and especially officer roles because we're still not 50-50 in the military and in a lot of space and marine, but I mean the maritime space, but a lot of in IT where I came from, we are not 50-50 at all. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
No, thanks for saying that, Elizabeth. Something that was interesting about me joining the Navy as well was everyone in the space that I was working in and living in, basically my university, people were like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you joining the Navy? No one at my school, to my knowledge, was going to officer candidate school or joining the Navy or joining the service of any kind. I think that the people at my school are more likely to join, the Peace Corps or Teach for America, which were also things I
Mhm.
considered. Basically, the impetus to join the Navy was I really felt like I wanted to be of service before maybe starting my career. I wanted to do something to help other people. And for me personally, the Navy seemed like the best avenue to do that, to do some kind of service before I started on what I considered in the past my real career, which I was planning on going into journalism. And it's so interesting that I thought like, oh, I'll just do 4 years and then I'll get out of the Navy and then go do like my real job and live my real life. And after being in the Navy for around 8 years, I started realizing like this is like a whole career unto itself. And it's something that I really, really enjoyed.
I've had a long career and I believe absolutely in being able to do multiple different things. I think continuing to challenge yourself, continuing to stretch yourself, I think is fantastic. And that really puts us into that first question I want to get into about SeaSmart because you transitioned from commanding Navy surface vessels to writing code. I don't know what that transition was. If you took a week off, you looked at traditional maritime study guides that treat every brain, basically. I'm not going to say, a mariner's brain or, civilian's brain the same, but they treat every brain the same and they force you into blindly memorizing answers to just pass a test. And that really doesn't have the staying power. Like I said in my introduction, you need to have those different things in your brain and you need to have it on recall when you're doing something difficult, because just like Navy training and just like any military training, it has to be rote. You don't want to have to flip through, your light charts on your helm. You don't want to have to struggle with what am I seeing here? So SeaSmart completely restructured this by utilizing adaptive quizzing architecture, which I think is really brilliant. From a software development perspective, how does an adaptive algorithm analyze a mariner's mistakes in real time and adjust the training and teach the actual logic behind the rule rather than just rote memorization? Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So this part was actually pretty easy. When I was building the app in the database of questions, I basically just took every single COREGS question directly from the Coast Guard's database. They have this like big spreadsheet and it's all public domain. So none of it's proprietary. You can just grab it and use it in your app. And I basically structured the file with the assistance of AI in such a way where each question is tagged by category. So for example, every single question about towing has a tag that says it's a towing question. And so as you're going through the questions in the app, as you're quizzing, if you get one question wrong about towing, you're going to get more questions about towing so that you can sort of pressure test your knowledge of towing until you get that right, until you gain mastery of that. And I think that that's super important because I think when people struggle with rules of the road, there are particular areas of the rules that they struggle with. I think sometimes there are some things in the rules that are actually kind of intuitive. And for me personally, were really easy to grasp. And there are other parts of the rules that people have a really hard time with, like lights and shapes is one that people frequently struggle with, like you just mentioned.
Mhm.
And towing especially, I think towing can be a little bit tricky. So I wanted to structure the app in a way that wasn't just like giving you random questions, because even though that can be helpful, I don't think it's helpful for someone who's really trying to hone in one specific area and improve in one, I guess, sort of sticking point where they're having a hard time memorizing the rule. So that's sort of what I had in mind when I was engineering this. And additionally, in the app, if you want to focus on only towing questions, for example, or only application questions or only lights and shapes questions, you can actually select just those questions. So you can kind of tailor the quiz to you and personalize it to you. I think that makes studying just so much better, so much faster, because you can sort of really hyper focus on what you need to focus on.
Yeah. And I think too, not everyone learns the same way, like I talked about before. And so being able to really focus in on what you're talking about, those particular areas. I know even though I grew up sailing, I'm not a sailor. I'm a powerboater. And so whenever I see those sailing questions, like who has the right of way with these two boats? I'm like, oh, so I think I'm going to, I've downloaded your app, but I think I'm going to focus on those sailing questions because in Annapolis here, I swear that's all we have around. So let's talk a little bit about the actual process of turning the problem that you saw about this memorization, rote memorization into the application. In the legacy software era, really, I mean, building an application with all of these questions, these 1,010 questions and adaptive feedback loops would require hiring a team. I remember looking at other apps before back in the day, and people were charging, hundreds of $1,000s to get applications built and raising venture capitalists, to fund them and spending 6 months in development. So now you can go into tools like you use, like Lovable and Replit to vibe codes or the prototype over, you used a hyper-focused 24-hour window. I don't think that was your whole application build, but certainly it was at least a proof of concept for you. But, looking at your tech stack and what you wanted to build, and you kind of knew you wanted a phone app. What did the process look like? And how did this AI assisted software empower, you to do this and build your custom marine tool without needing that background in computer science?
Yeah, great question, Elizabeth. So I actually started reading about vibe coding around 2025. And at the time, I was still working on the ship and we were on deployment. So all the news I was reading was kind of just on my very little free time. And, I thought vibe coding sounds really interesting, but I immediately thought, but that's not for me because I heard coding and I was like, yeah, that's not for me. But the more that I started reading about it and getting into it, I was like, oh, this is kind of a lot like creative writing. Like you show up to the page and you have this like murky idea or concept that you want to execute. And you do have to be skilled. You have to have like a vision and you also have to be able to articulate what it is you want to be good at vibe coding in the same way that you need to be good at creative writing. So basically I started exploring different ways I could do this. I really started vibe coding or agentic engineering in March of this year, which is a crazy thing to say. That's when I started really delving into it. Around that time is when I really started transitioning out of the Navy and starting my terminal leave, which is basically where you're still in the Navy, but you're not showing up for duty. You kind of have some time at home, where you can spend time with your family. And in my case, also spend a ton of time on the computer. I was basically just watching every single YouTube video I possibly could about coding with the software and reading every article that I could, watching all these different people, showing off their builds and showcasing their tech stack and everything like that. So it was a really steep learning curve, but I learned a lot over the course of a couple of months. And then Lovable had this like 24-hour challenge where they basically said, here's free credits, unlimited free credits, build whatever you want with it. And I thought, oh, perfect. I've been doing all this reading and learning. I'm going to, shoot my shot. I'm going to use this 24 hours to build something cool. And when I sat down to start building, I thought, you know what? I have all this domain expertise. I have all this knowledge around the coal regs that is just going to die and go away. It's just going to atrophy in my brain if I don't get this out, if I don't use it. And another appealing thing about building this app was I didn't have to worry about copyright because all the information's public domain. And that started like really making me think like, why if this information is public domain and we have the technology, why aren't we capitalizing on the use of this technology to deliver a totally transformative learning experience to sailors? And specifically because I was in the Navy, I built this with a Navy sailor in mind, a Navy bridge watch standard in mind. We have these pretty grueling, pretty brutal war processes. And honestly, the way that I studied the entire 8 years that I was in the Navy was with the book. I mean, like you kind of alluding to what you were saying earlier about how it's a rite of passage. Carrying that book around is like, if you're not carrying it around, if you're not like visibly studying for rules of the road, people are like, do you even want your qualification? Like, what are you even doing? And so I felt very married to that book. And then the Navy has this app called Shellback that does have a rules of the road quiz engine, but it doesn't have adaptive learning, and it doesn't have the board mode, like the one that I built into my app, which kind of pressure tests your knowledge and makes you answer questions really quickly. And I used it a little bit, but I found that it wasn't very intuitive or very helpful. So often I would just go straight back to the book and go through my notes, which is great to do. I'm actually really glad I had that experience because I think if I had an easier time studying, I wouldn't feel pulled to teach about it or to talk about it or to vibe code about it. So I'm actually really grateful that I had that experience. And I did at one point know the rules extremely cold, but it's one of those muscles that if you don't flex, I mean, you know how it goes.
Oh, for
You
sure.
forget stuff really easily. Um,
Yeah, you do. Even, and I don't have your training, but I can tell you from my captain's course that I took back in January 2025. Yeah, I feel a little rusty sometimes. Yeah.
yeah. But back to your question, what really inspired me to build this is I thought vibe coding was cool and fun and awesome. I still think it's cool and fun and awesome, and I love building stuff. But I thought, how can I make this? How can I make something that's really going to be impactful, like beyond the app or beyond the computer, beyond the phone? And so when I was building this, I really put myself, well, really back in my own shoes. Like I thought, what would the Victoria that was standing these 4 hour watches or 3 hour watches at a time, what would really move the needle in my training? What would really help? And so when I kind of looked at the problem that way, I sort of reverse engineered and thought, okay, these are all the different sort of like study modes that I used. And this is how an app could actually take those same study tools or study modes and make them into something legible and helpful.
Yeah. And so thinking about that a little bit more and talking about really the difference between the Navy, what you guys are doing, because the Navy rules are layered, I would think, on top of the COLA regs. So you have additional layers in there that probably we don't have as we're just studying for, our ticket, for the regular, Coast Guard ticket. Like I have a 50-ton or 100-ton or whatever you're studying for. So think about really the SeaSmart. It really isn't meant to be running, obviously, when you're at the helm and navigating a crowded inlet, like I said in the introduction. It's a tool designed for rigorous exam prep. Like you talked about a little bit, it talks about having the timers on there. A permanent objective recall or cognitive recall is really important. Like we talked about, when you're underway and you're having to make these decisions, you're not able to grab the book. I've never started on a Navy ship, so I can't really tell you how that works, but you can't be referencing your book when you're underway or you're in that moment. So how does really taking the Navy, what you've learned in the Navy and all of those additional layers that are in there, and then making it a mobile app, how can a civilian captain studying for their ticket use your tool? Is it going to be that much different, or is there something maybe that's make us even better at what we do by using your app?
Yeah, great question. I don't think it's actually very different at all. I think that in the Navy, we do have additional considerations when we are transiting, when we're underway at sea. But the coal regs are the coal regs are the coal regs, and they apply to everyone, all vessels, all the time. So I think that if you jumped on my app right now as sort of a commercial mariner, or even a boater, I mean, even a kayaker, if you jumped on my app right now, I think you'd get a lot of value out of it because the rules are the same for everyone, and they get applied pretty much the same to everyone. I mean, the Navy, we don't exactly get excused just because we're a warship. Obviously, we do things a little bit differently, but I think day to day, we are just as liable as every other vessel on the sea to follow these rules to a T. So I think anybody can jump on this app. Anybody who owns a boat, drives a boat, is on ships, whether you're 100 ton, 50 ton, 0 ton, you can get on here. And I think it's really useful. I think
Yeah,
knowing the rules cold, no matter what kind of like shipboard environment you're working in, it's still really important to know what to do in any given situation. So I think this is
I
like,
would agree.
yeah,
I mean, there's so many boaters that, as we all know, don't know the rules, and it can cause, a challenge. Like I was just out lake boating this past weekend in Georgia and was driving the boat, and he's not licensed at all. And he was asking me about, who has the right of way there. And I was telling him who has the right of way and passage and stuff. And he was getting frustrated about people trying to be in the middle of the channel, and not really channel, but middle of the lake, kind of going in the middle of the lake. And there's a lot of surf boats there and stuff. So there's a lot of
yeah,
wakes and stuff you have to watch out for and lake boating. But he was frustrated. And I said, look, I said, on boats, I said, you don't know people's intention. I said, you don't know what they're trying to do. I said, you don't have blinkers, you don't have lanes. I said, so your best bet is to make sure that your move, letting them know dramatically where you're going to be heading and where you're going to be going so that they understand what your move is. I said, so don't try to squeeze them out of that middle. Like, don't try to keep going in there. That's actually not really good. That's actually how you kill yourself.
yes. Oh
I
my
said,
God, yeah.
just dramatically pick a direction that you want to go and hope that he understands that direction, or she. I'm saying he, but that's universally he or she understands that direction. And because not everyone knows the passing side. Not everyone knows when you're approaching someone, not everyone knows if you're just going across the lake, who to give the right of way. And in a busy situation like that, there are boating accidents. I don't know the number this year. I haven't looked up the stats this year, but every year there's just a number of boating accidents that are caused because people really don't understand that. So I think everyone should use it.
Yeah, I agree. And everything you just said, we really in the Navy focus on early and substantial action. Just
Yes.
like the core regs say, early and substantial with due regard to prudent seamanship. So I think that is incredibly important. I guess to more succinctly answer your question, right now, my app is a little bit more generally about the rules of the road specifically. Um, and on our roadmap, Nick and I plan on adding more features like a lights lab where you can kind of like look at a ship from all angles and kind of look at their lights. And I think that's really where it's going to be more tailored to the Navy watch standard because warships look way different from like any other ship on the water. And we have special light configurations that look a little bit different from other ships. So we look a little weird at night. And that's something that we train to a lot because in the Navy, we obviously work a lot in fleet concentration areas where there are a lot of warships. We work all over the world and across all these different fleets, there's different types of boats everywhere. So it's really important to know the difference between like a fishing boat, a trawler, a speedboat, a ferry. So I think something like a lights lab, I think is going to deliver a lot of value. I've already kind of started building the models for these. So I have this pretty cool video that I built with Replit of a 360 model of a DDG. So literally like just toggle on night and day. And then you can see like a 360 view of like, this is what they would look like if you were astern of the ship. And, if you were overtaking them, this is what they would look like. Or if you were crossing their bow, this is what the ship would look like. So that's, I guess, like veering more toward a specific Navy customer, but I think you could also
Mhm.
value from that or derive value from that if you're somebody who's just never seen a warship before, and then you get in the app and you're like, so this is what it looks like. This is why it looks so weird.
Yeah, but even so, even from my exam, I had to know, tow. I had to know ships. I had to know containers. I had to know length. I had to know, 50 meters or beyond. I had to know the light configurations. I had to know if they're towing at night. And towing is a whole nother animal. And that was very tricky with the light configuration and knowing what they're doing and knowing from the different angles, those are tough questions. So I think anybody who's studying for their just regular, I would say civilian captain's license could benefit. But if you're not necessarily in that position where you're studying for the captain's license, if you're going out there, you want to know what you're going to come back and see. You're going out early morning, you're coming in late at night. And there is, you're going to come across this stuff. So anyway, so I'm excited to see your next version of the app, but do you want to show us the current version now? Do you want to get into that demo?
Yeah. Okay. So the demo hasn't been approved in the App Store yet, but it should be approved, I would say, within the next week. So I wanted to give your viewers like a sneak peek of what we're publishing next, because I think that we came up with some pretty exciting new features, and I'll just get right into it and start showing you.
Okay. Awesome.
Perfect. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So when you first log into the app, this is the screen that pops up. So I designed the app so that you just get right into it as soon as you get in here. So you can see up here the question says inland only. That's where you'll see whether it's inland or international. And then I'm just gonna like randomly pick one. I'm not gonna read it.
For those that don't know, there are
Yeah.
different questions and there are different rules for inland, international, and so you do need to know that part of it when you get in there too. So there are different rules that apply for those different situations, and some of
Yes,
them apply,
exactly.
for both. Some of them apply for just one and not the other. So
Yeah, exactly. No, I that's also why I kind of designed it this way because it's really
Mhm.
important to know inland or international. A lot of students get that mixed up. Or sometimes like I've been in the situation where I speed read the question and I get it wrong because it's like, oh, well, it said inland, not international. And
Yeah,
so I really wanted to make that distinction very clear in the app. Okay, so you can see I got this question right, so you could just go on to the next question. Um, but this is what happens when you get a question wrong. So basically, it says that you got the question wrong, and then it gives you the right answer. But then if you scroll down, I have the rule, the applicable rule verbatim, with the keywords highlighted. So you don't have to, if you get the question wrong, you don't have to like go back into your book and look because I already have the entire Colerex text built into the app. So you can go down here and read it right away, which is also something that helps recall and it helps strengthen the relationship between the rule and the question. So you can just sort of review the rule really quick. You can move on to the next question. If this is something that you're like, wow, I always get this question wrong, you can come over here and actually bookmark it. And when you bookmark a question, basically in the app, there's a little library that has all of your bookmarked questions. So you can just go back and quiz only on those if you want to. Another feature of the app too is if you have any kind of issue or question, with the question itself, you can go over here and click the flag and you can either report the question or add some kind of note to us. So, this is something that we built in intentionally because we always want to be improving on the app and making it better for mariners. So we also want to engage with mariners and answer their questions. So if there's anything ever in here that you want to provide feedback on, we really welcome that. Our goal is to make this the best maritime app for the fleet. And the way that we do that is with feedback.
that's
Um,
great.
so I'm not going to keep going through all of these, but basically, that's the gist of it. You can just kind of go through. If you get a question wrong, you can review it. Um, then if you want some pressure, you can come over here to board mode. And basically, it's a 25 question quiz. You have 60 seconds to answer each one. But in this version of the quiz, you get no feedback. And some of the questions you actually have to type in the answer. So it's not just multiple choice. You also have to type in, the keyword. And I built these questions so that it's easier for you to recall like what the most important word or phrase in the question actually is. Um, so you can just go through here, um, and you just won't get any feedback if you get it wrong. But as you can see,
So
there's
with
this.
that piece of it, do
Oh
you
yeah,
guys have in the for your exam, you said you have 60 seconds per question and it's 25 questions, so it's a 25-minute exam. I know in our civilian exam, it's an hour exam for that
yeah,
piece of it.
yeah. So we actually there's no time limit in our exams. I mean
Oh,
there
okay.
notionally is there. I mean nobody should be taking more than an hour on their exam. But the reason why I built this board mode feature into it is because in addition to these tests in the Navy, we have to do oral boards. So it's basically like
Ah,
there's maybe five department heads or like more senior officers who are drilling you on these rules. And some of the rules you have to know verbatim. Like Rule 6, you have to be able to like say the entirety of Rule 6, safe speed, in a board. So I built this to kind of mimic the pressure that you would experience in the board.
got
Just
it.
because I think that this is like an additional layer of help for like a Navy bridge watchstander who does have to go through these boards. But I'm going to get out of board mode so that I could show you some of the other features. If you go back to the home, which brings you right into training, you can come right up here to the book and you can read the entire coal regs. So if you're just like waiting in line at the grocery store, or if you're on the bus or the train and you're like, you know what, I'm bored and I kind of want to just read the coal regs, or maybe you want to take a nap. I don't know. Maybe you want to like lull yourself to sleep, but you can grab the coal regs over here and I have the entire rule text verbatim, so you can just like come in here and read the rule, and then it's again separated by inland and international, so you can like click over to inland and read the inland rules. You could go over to the international tab and read the international rules. And I just think it's so important to have the actual text in your pocket because
Yeah.
there's no substitute for reading the rules. Um, Obviously, I think that technology can make it easier. I think this app is going to make it better to study the rules, but there's really no substitute for just getting into the text and reading it verbatim. So I wanted to build that in as well. Um,
Yeah.
oh,
Do you know, so one of the I watched this somewhere and I forgot where it was. It was probably like Instagram or something, but there was um it was a female captain and she was talking to like little kids, and it was really cute because she explained the history of the rule and why that rule is in place. And it kind of makes it more like
ooh,
story time. And it helps people, some people who don't do the memorization. And I'm just wondering, I've always like, I don't like fiction. I mean, history, just reading straight history, but I really enjoy the story behind history. I enjoy it if it's more like a, not historical fiction, but I do like that too, but like sort of like the story behind it. And it's so, some of these things that are out there literally have been out there since, I don't know, the early industry days. I mean, like, there was something I read recently that we have because of the fact that when ships would leave the harbor, like in the 1600s, they wouldn't know anything about where they were. There was no communication method. So we still have this rule in place. I forgot what it was that I was reading about, but I was like, we still have this in place because in the 1600s, we couldn't understand that. I was like, what?
wow. I love that
So I just
too.
don't know. Is there, yeah, I'm just wondering if like, sort of a historical kind of thing. Cause I know that when I was reading the Kohler eggs, it was so boring. Like you said, a nap. But if I had some of the history or like some of the interesting parts about it, it might be more memorable.
Yeah. Okay. So something, a text specifically that has made the coal regs really come alive for me. And I realize how nerdy that sounds, but I actually really, really enjoy reading this book. But have you ever read Farwell's Rules of the Nautical Road? Um,
Mm-mm.
if you haven't, I definitely recommend getting
I'm
a
gonna get
copy
that
like
up.
ASAP today. But
Yeah.
basically,
Okay.
Farwell's it's this huge tome, but it goes through every single rule and it talks about all the legal precedents, and like a bunch of case studies that led up to that rule being implemented. And some of it can
Yeah.
be a little bit dry, but I think some of the stories are extremely fascinating because it's like all of these rules are written in blood, unfortunately. All of these rules are written because some tragedy happened at sea. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting to see the way that the courts actually like take these rules and apply them. Because obviously in a collision at sea, nobody's 100% at fault. And no one is totally exonerated. So I think it's really interesting the way that the courts apply um these rules. It's a lot more nuanced than these questions on the quiz app would suggest. And that's actually something that I want to get into in my YouTube channel. Nick and I just started a YouTube channel to educate people on rules of the road. And Farwell's is definitely one of those tags that I'm leaning heavily on. And I want to, use Farwell's and bring examples in so that I can kind of like bring it home to the mariner that's like,
Yeah.
well, why does this matter?
Right.
Um,
Coming to life, sort of. It's how it comes to life. Yeah. Yeah. I think that that would be really interesting. I think that would be great. Anything that you can do to make it, give it the history, because certainly, like you said, a lot of these things are historical. And I remember now what it was. It was basically if someone wants to, they're passing in front of you, if they're coming from, your port side, and it was a sailing rule. And it was, if they're approaching from your port, you have the right of way, because in the old days when you had a rudder, you oftentimes would be on the right side or starboard side of your boat and you couldn't see the port side. So you would have the right of way. And she was explaining this to like these little kids. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. So,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know if that's actually true or not. I don't know if it's in Farwell's, but I'll get a copy and I'll find out.
No, I love Farwell's. I can't recommend that enough.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
going to get a copy. Thank you.
yeah, of course. I have one more feature that I want to kind of go
Oh, sure.
over with
Yeah.
viewers in here. It's actually really new. So, we also built in this little kind of like game or simulation. It's called the Helm, and you can kind of like pick your mission, and then you complete each mission to unlock the next one. So basically, the very first one, we put you in a small crossing situation, and then you have to navigate your way out of it. I think this is just a way that we wanted to like bring home like the practical application of the rule. And this is still like very much in the beta phase. This is like, version one. We hope to iterate on this a lot in the coming months. But I think that this is actually fun. I find myself like playing this while I'm in line at the grocery store. It's like a little nautical video game. Um, but yeah, so basically, you get a brief of the situation. So in this situation, you're the giveaway vessel and a contact's crossing from starboard. Something that I built into this because I wanted to make sure to drive home. It says take early and substantial action to keep well clear, which takes the exact verbatim language from the rules of the road, and it kind of helps
Mhm.
reinforce this is like how you're supposed to be approaching these situations. So if you start the mission, you're this, and then you have the contact, and then you basically just have this home, so you can um, navigate like this. It's kind of rudimentary, and you can also change your engine speed as well. So I'm just going to go faster to speed this up. But basically, your objective is to get to this green little circle over here. And you can also use these little buttons down here to move around. Um, wait, I accidentally restarted this, but let me just get back
Oh, I'd
to,
like to see what happens when you hit the other boat. Is it like a big explosion
oh, no, no, you
or
just
fail?
fail. Yeah,
Like Pac-Man fail?
yeah, you just fail and then you get feedback. So here, let me
Okay.
go, let me just get there so that I could show you. But yeah, this is
Mhm.
like in its early phase, but I really like this because at the end, you get it scored on rule compliance, your safety margin, you get graded on whether you took early and substantial action in accordance with the rules. Um, and then you get like a little bonus, which is kind of fun, for a clean maneuver, and then you get your like final score. But let
Yeah,
me
that's
show
great.
you, like, if you do nothing, um, you just kind of get like cooked. And that's obviously what you don't want to do at sea.
Right.
And then you get this little pop-up question. So it says like risk of collision exists. What's your best action? And like it's obviously like alter course to starboard and like
Hmm.
passport to port. So I'm going to resume the simulation here. And then it says collision, you failed to maintain a safe distance. So then you get this like final score here. And then it says here, small course changes are hard for the contact to detect. Make early substantial alterations to show a clear aspect change. And that's a really
Yeah.
important thing too that
Hmm.
I built in there because we don't really talk about aspect change, or like the Cole regs doesn't say aspect change per se, but that's something that we really drill on in the Navy is like showing someone an aspect change. You're showing the other ship like a change in your lights or a change
Yeah.
in your aspect, a change of what they're looking at so that they actually know that you altered course.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what I was saying, just as a simple example to my friend on the lake. I'm like, don't play chicken because that's not teaching him anything or her anything. You need to actually show them which direction you're going. It was a very eye-opening experience for me for what, someone might think. And because, when you're on the other end of that and you see someone doing that, you're like, what are they doing? Where are they going? And you don't know. And, yeah. So I thought that was, so this is great. I think adding gaming to your app is really, really a cool way to do that. And to quiz people and also to encourage them to continue to learn, because that's another way that's like everyone's brain works differently. And any way you can get this into your brain, I would have used this so much when I was going through my credentials, because quite honestly, there were some that I was really stuck on, some that I knew, really well, but the ones that I was stuck on, I would love to have done this a lot. So thank you. So I'd like to move on if there's nothing else you want to show us with the app. Is that okay? Or is there other things you want to show us? Because this is really cool. And you said this is a feature that's coming soon. It's not out in deployment and in the App Store yet, right?
Yeah, this is coming soon. Hopefully, fingers crossed, sometime in the next week or so.
That's fantastic. Thank you for showing us even future stuff that you're working on. I appreciate it.
For sure. Just to clarify, the rest of the app is available on the iPhone now, for download. It's just this Helm feature that's still, in progress.
Now, are you on the Play Store as well, or just the App Store?
Just the App Store at the moment.
Okay. Is there plans for the Play Store?
Long term there is, but right now we really want to focus on getting the app right, on one platform before we move on to the next.
Absolutely. Totally understand. Just wanted our viewers to know.
Perfect.
I really want to walk through something that I call at the end of every podcast that I do. I have this thing called the buoy run. I'm a real big fan of rodeo, and I love the boating contests where they do they go in, they do these docking contests, and I love the buoy run. So it's when we go through, it's like a lightning round. It's real quick kind of questions that off the top of your head. Some of them, may be related to what you're doing in the app. Some of them may not be. So I know these are surprise questions. So the first question, you're building out upcoming features like we just saw in SeaSmart. Would you rather spend your next AI deployment or credits, as we like to say, sprint, finalizing your interactive light lab feature for night operations, or building out a user-driven mnemonic notes lab for passing down universal rules? So when you're hearing those horns, and passing on rivers and inland.
Oh, that's a great question. I think I think the mnemonic one is probably the one that I would focus on next, just because it's a lighter lift than the Lights Lab. I think the Lights Lab is going to just necessarily because of the nature of the 3D modeling is going to take a little bit longer, but we'll see. We'll see what's in the works. I'll keep you guys posted.
Yeah. It's exciting. Okay. Next question. You famously built your working prototype by using, vibe coding in this 24-hour kind of credit token window using Lovable. If you're locked in a wheelhouse and had another 24 hours of unlimited free AI token, what brand new feature would you be coding into the app next? And we talked about that a little bit, so pick a new one.
Oh, okay. So I can't pick Lights Lab.
No, pick something different that you're thinking in the future. Oh, this would be so cool to have that you haven't really thought about yet. You could just spend your next 24 hours of free tokens building.
Okay, so this is kind of a crazy one, but I'll just go. So we rebuilt the entire app in Replit, and Replit is what we use for the app now. So if Replit gave me 24 hours of free tokens to just build whatever I wanted. Something that I think would be incredibly cool is if you could, I don't know if you're familiar with marinetraffic.com, but it basically takes every vessel's like AIS. I think it would be really cool to layer that AIS data on top of like an actual simulation. So like, let's say you get into the app and you get into the Helm scenario. Imagine if you could just pick a port, like if you could just pick Charleston or if you could pick like Annapolis. And then you get like dropped into a scenario where all the marine traffic from marinetraffic.com is layered onto that. And you just build that AIS layer on top. I think that would probably take a lot of data and be a little bit time intensive, but I kind of sky's the limit with vibe coding and technology is getting better every day. So that's something that like dream version, that would be something that I would spend time building.
That would be really cool. We can talk about that one a little bit offline in another conversation, but I have some ideas there too that may be able to help you get there. But anyway, next question.
Perfect.
Given the high stress culture of the Navy surface warfare pipeline, would you rather face an oral qualification board with a room full of department heads yelling at you while you're in board mode, or write a cloud native software application completely from scratch? So you've done both. So what was actually easier,
Oh,
being in that board mode and having?
I'll take the second one any day. At least when I get myself into like a sticky situation with the software development piece, like there's always like a way out. You can always ask for help. You can always go to Claude or go to Google or go to Reddit. I've actually gotten a lot of really great advice from developers on Reddit. But in board mode, you're on your own. You're completely cooked, and the department heads can be brutal. So yeah, I would take building software from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you're in the public domain, though, we'll see how brutal people can be on the outside too. So that'll be interesting to watch your journey with this. So last question is really predictive. True or false? By 2030, the United States Coast Guard will completely eliminate static, paper-based multiple choice tests in favor of active, mobile, adaptive validation models like SeaSmart.
2030, I feel true.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. It certainly would be, or at least adding this in is an important piece of the study guide, because I think you're onto something really, really great, and I really hope you and wish you the best of success and getting this out there. I think there's a lot of people that can benefit from it. So I want to thank you. This has been really good for me. I mean, I think we're complete geeks when we say we'd love to talk about the COLA regs, but I think they're very important, like you said, and how we navigate and how we get out there as safely as boaters. So thank you for taking the time to explain how this works, showing us your application, talk about your process. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can empower others to really get in there and learn these things when it's more approachable. And maybe with the gaming that you're coming out with, it may seem more fun for people. So I think it's always good to sharpen our maritime instincts and master the rules of the road, keeping everyone safe. So thank you for developing SeaSmart. And I don't know if you want to give a shout out to your partner, Nick. I know he's not on this, but if you want to give a shout out real fast, I'd love to let you do that if you want to.
100%. Nick has been a great friend, a great mentor, an amazing co-founder, and a very prolific builder. He actually works at Replit, and he is just an absolute beast with that software. So he's also someone who's taught me a lot, and the reason why SeaSmart is as good as it is right now.
Well, thanks to Nick for helping you and making this happen, right? So thanks to everyone. I think you can see that as we continue on this AI vibe coding and really adaptive learning really is going to be becoming more and more. Things like what SeaSmart is doing are designed to augment your skills, build your confidence, keep you sharp, and the ultimate human in the loop as well. All these innovations out there that are going to be happening in the next 3 to 5 years really going to help us empower us every day to be better boaters and really making boating and learning about boating and navigation choices more achievable. So keep your eyes on the horizon, keep your software updated, and download your confidence before you cast off. So thank you so much for joining me, Victoria, and I'm Elizabeth Fortunato, and this is the AI Captain's Log, Fair Winds and Following Seas.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the AI Captain's Log. You can find me on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, and Spotify. And if you find me on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. Thanks so much, and happy boating.